Good afternoon. I don't normally do videos in the truck now. I was warned about that. I was told not to do it while I'm driving, but I'm sure you guys can tell I'm not driving. And I've tried to do them not even in the vehicle. That's how much I respect the person who warned me about that, because he agreed with the content. He was just saying, hey, just be smart. Don't do it while you're driving. So I respect that. I'm not a person hard to work with. I want to talk about the Olympics. I want to talk about the protests that happened during this Olympics year. And I want to talk about the comparisons to Colin Kaepernick. I watch Sputnik Radio, Fault Lines, all the time. And they were talking about how there was a protest this year. Gwen Berry, I understand she turned away from the flag during the Star Spangled Banner. She's a hammer thrower. I don't know much about this. She finished third, and she did this at the Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon, which entitles her to compete at the Tokyo Olympics. She shuffled her feet and turned her back, and she draped over her head a T-shirt that featured the words "activist athlete," native of St. Louis, Missouri. That's bad. Missouri's pretty bad. She raised her fist. The person gets racism as a tribute to her family. They put on probation for that. And there was a fencer that took a knee on the podium. I think it was a couple years ago. I said, I'm not going into that. Then there's another one I was looking at. I guess she's a woman that put her arms up in an X like that. I guess she's, to paraphrase her little speech she made, she said that the X is where all oppressed peoples meet. I think she's, I forgot. Anyway, hold on a second. Yeah, Raven Saunders. That's her name. She actually was an athlete on the USA team. And she's a shot putter. Raven Saunders says she represents the intersection of where all people who are oppressed meet. Said knew she was defying Olympic organizers. Not getting into that. So Jamal and Mr. Stranahan, they spoke on what this means, and they did a comparison between that and Colin Kaepernick. They said that Colin Kaepernick is not the same because these people are actually competing for the American country, for America. They're competing under the flag, whereas Colin Kaepernick was an athlete that played for the 49ers. He represented that corporation, that business. And I guess you could say represent the NFL as well. Sorry about that. They got into something I thought was very important. And that is that Colin Kaepernick never staged his protest in any way to insult the military or the police. Which he didn't. That was never his intent. It didn't come through as his intent. It came through as a silent protest against police brutality. It came through as a silent protest and all that type of stuff. People are like, well, here he's making all this money, he's millions, he's real oppressed. And I'm like, I remember thinking, back then I was on the road, I was trucking. And I remember, you're living in that redneck, backwards world. So you don't really see, and I really wasn't into the racial thing back then. I wasn't into politics, I wasn't into any of this stuff back then. And it got me because Colin Kaepernick was told to kneel. He was sitting down in the beginning. He started kneeling. There was a guy I think it was a Green Beret or something, told him to kneel. He never spoke out in any kind of way to disrespect the police or the military. And to say he did is to take away from his protest. And I remember thinking to myself, these white folks don't know why he's protesting. He could have seen them boys getting shot or something and said, that could be my cousin. He could have said that at one time, that could have been me. You know, loud mouth, talking crazy to the police, talking crazy to white folks, shoplift. That could have been me. You know, and that could have been it to make him say, I gotta do something. I can't just sit here making my money, you know, compartmentalized to where it's easy. Steve Harvey talked about how it's easy to sit up on the big house on the hill and make your money and watch the world from afar. You got to get involved. You got to be a part. I think that Colin Kaepernick acted, whether you like it or not, he acted on his integrity. I think Colin Kaepernick acted on what he believed was right. And for me, what I took from the backlash Colin Kaepernick's protest was really two-pronged. A, culture war. That we don't have a lot of things as white people, but we do have the NFL, we do have sports, we do have the military, and that you are taking away from us something that, for us, is all we have. I also realized, like Michael Brooks put it once, that when you build an empire, you have to always have an other. You have to always have an enemy. You have to have this person that is coming to take our fire. It's coming to, destroy what we have. You have to always, because if there's no evil empire enemy that's coming, then that means we're evil, right? As white people, as the people whose ancestors built the country and all that stuff, then we're evil, right? So you have to always have the communists, the homosexuals, the Jews, the globalists, the boogeyman. You have to always have a boogeyman. Not saying there aren't, elements out there that are bad, that are threats to our society, but I'm just making the point to you that you have to have that. And Colin Kaepernick was that. He was the new enemy. Michael Brooks once talked about, this is a great sketch, a great segment. He talks about how Trump is the white Farrakhan and how white people really need a Farrakhan. Like that Farrakhan isn't as powerful as he once was, and that even, he's talking about kill them and all that, and when they go to Wendy's, basically eye for an eye. When you had the black murders, like 2016, he was talking about that. And Michael Brooks was saying that they need that. They need this threat that, what's Tupac's aunt over there in Cuba? She's gonna come over here with these submarines. They have to always have this threat against white supremacy that doesn't exist. That never existed. There's never been a rich global, that's never existed. Those are white people. Those are white people who were upholding white supremacy. And that that's what it always was. There's, this idea of, I'm going too far. I'm not getting into that. You just got me, like I said, that's the first thing I realized, is you have to have a boogeyman, and that's what Mr. Kaepernick represented, as a boogeyman, the black boogeyman. This big black strong man who's a threat to white supremacy. He's real oppressed. I'm like, what does money have to do with oppressed? You don't know what that man went through before he joined the NFL. You don't know what that man's seen. Friends getting beat up by the police. I watched the thing, this guy was an FBI agent. Back in the day, he was talking about he was jogging out somewhere and the police stopped him. They was going to rough him up. And he showed his credentials, and they were like, and he was wondering what would happen if he didn't have them. So don't tell me just because a black man's made it, that a black man can't sit back and say, how I got over. But by the grace of God, go I. I heard Clarence Thomas said he was somewhere, and a prison bus went by, and it was all black men on there. He said, he was like, but the grace of God, go I. So don't give me this crap that because a black man's made it, that he can't acknowledge that could have been me. I could have been Trayvon being followed by a white vigilante. Don't tell me I couldn't be somewhere in the black realtor in Nashville. White woman called the police, and the police came out there, and he's like, this is my house. And the police like, you can be here. And the white woman's like, well, I'm going to call the sheriff. Showing you that it didn't matter if he was legit or not. She's doing it because she doesn't want you in that neighborhood. That doesn't do with whether you're selling drugs or whatever. You're black. I don't want you here. You know, and Colin could have been like, hey, that could have been me. I could have been out there somewhere worried about the police running up, guns drawn at me, and I'm in my house. I heard, was it Ving Rhames was in his house, and they pulled him out, and he was in his boxes, laid him on the ground, and cuffed him up. So don't give me this bull crap because a black man's made it, and he's successful, and he's looking back on his life. He can't say, hey, I was lucky, I was blessed, whatever you believe in. That's first of all. Second thing is that they need the culture war. That's what I really learned with the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. Is that they really Republicans, like, they have nothing to offer now. And that there is nothing for them to offer except for race bait and gay bashing. That's really it, man. There ain't much else there in that pot. That pot, you know, it's no meat in that pot. It's all just soup. It's thick soup. But when you dig in it, ain't nothing there. You know, this gentleman that, thankfully, I guess he was a mock bomber at the Capitol, happened last week. That was, like the 19th or the 18th or something. Maybe the 20th of August. He's up there telling me he couldn't get his medication. And I'm like, then that means you're a Democrat, right? You want more health care. No. That's not what that means. That means I am a white man and I am suffering. I still believe in my system. It's just my system is not working for me. And so rather than doing what most folks do and get into politics and make things happen, I'm just going to go up to the Capitol with a bomb. That's what that represented. That we're living in an era now where they've lost patience. You always had it. With Rudolph and Eric Rudolph and Timothy McVeigh, you had it. But this era is different because you never had Republican politicians bringing that to the forefront. Never. You never had them put the monkeys in the front seat. They always had monkeys. You always had crazed monkeys. But Trump put them up in the front seat, and that's dangerous. And they're still there. So they need the culture war. They need the culture war, as well as the fact that Kaepernick kind of took away from one of the few things white folks could look at and forget about how fucked up society is. Because that's what white privilege is really about. The privilege to ignore reality. I saw something on Instagram the other day. I thought it was beautiful. I saved it. That we're all just making enough money. We're all just trying to make enough money to avoid the catastrophe that's coming. Whether that's Bezos going off into space, whether that's people that are going and getting land in New Zealand, and I was looking at Dark 5 talking about having a helicopter on standby and all that, whether it's folks that are the doomsday preppers where they build bunkers underground, whatever it is, they're just making money to flee. This isn't like folks that make money and they want to do tourist stuff, they want to travel and see Greece. This isn't that. This is people who are acknowledging we as a society are facing catastrophe. Different catastrophes, but we're facing catastrophes. And that's not good. That's the breakdown of society. It isn't gay people and transgender people getting rights. It isn't black folks throwing their fist up at the Olympics. It's rich people saying, I'm going to just walk away from the table. Atlas shrugged. There you go. I think that Colin Kaepernick is a hero. And I think Colin Kaepernick shows you that this idea of peaceful protest, for non-white people is a misnomer. That being peaceable and all that, they're not gonna respect you. You know what I mean? That's not gonna protect you. You know what I mean? You are not safe just because you're not in the street with an afro and a rifle and a beret on your head and a clenched fist. Just because you're not doing that stuff doesn't mean you're safe. You know, and I know that back in the day, James Brown and all that, they didn't have to be political. We have to be political now. We're dealing with the ticking clock. Climate change is getting worse. You know, these other catastrophes we're dealing with are getting worse. And nothing's being done about that. The Republican Party is doing everything they can to basically bury science. And that's not good for the working class. It's not good for anybody that's not white and living in a rural area, that's for sure. I think that Colin Kapernick was a cautionary tale. It's like Greta. It's like Greta Thunberg. This isn't just race, guys. This is about people acknowledging we are dealing with catastrophes right now, even though no one wants to talk about it. Greta Thunberg, Trump knocked her and made fun of her and all that stuff. Wasn't nothing funny about that. Wasn't nothing funny about that at all. This is the generation that's coming up next. And they're crying out to be heard. And they're crying out that action needs to be taken before, we reach, 3 Celsius or whatever, and all this sea rise and everything. I mean, we every year it gets hotter. We're dealing with these wildfires. Every year they get bigger. Anybody at this point that's knocking climate change is basically ignoring reality. That's all there is to it. And I acknowledge that. That's another thing with Colin Kaepernick is that for these people, they don't live in reality. I learned that. They don't live in reality. They don't live in reality. This isn't a discussion right or wrong, left or right. They don't live in the same world we live in. Period. And that's just reality, man. This is what it is. That's just what it is. I just think it's kind of sad, that anytime someone speaks up, whether it's about racial injustice or climate change or whatever, it's always like, you hate America. As though America is like naturally racist, naturally homophobic, and naturally like a polluting, destructive, parasitic scourge on the rest of the world, on the global stage, on society. And I think that's kind of sad to me. It's kind of sad to see that, to know that that's the reality we face going into the future. COVID for me was a wake-up call, because I remember when I seen them go out with the guns back in March, and it wasn't even a week or two into quarantine, and I'm like, wow. I knew then that COVID was going to last a long time, because what they've done with it is they've made it. Thanks for listening.